So, with that, just a reminder, you are in building the next generation of connected product manufacturers. You're in the right place. Excellent. I'm going to introduce Jeff Kaplan, who's our moderator for the day, who's going to kick things off and introduce our panel.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you all for being here. All right, so what we want to do today is have a very interactive discussion about the topic at hand and what it means in terms of Massachusetts. And I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about myself and also why I think this is an important topic and introduce our panelists. I've got this firm called Think Strategies, which I've been managing for the past 15 years or so. It's a consultancy. And the premise has been over the past 15 years that the world is moving from products to services. And when I first started, a lot of people were abandoning the idea of application service providers and utility computing. And I thought that they were going to come back around, and lo and behold, they certainly have. And I don't think we would be talking about IoT today if it weren't for the fact that we've seen the success of software as a service. We certainly have seen the power of the cloud, and I think the power of the cloud is what's making IoT bigger and better than even the old end-to-end world of the past. And SaaS is becoming a part of the ingredients that we use to be able to roll out these new IoT services. Now the question is, how does it change the nature of the product? It's obvious it can change the nature of software, it can change the nature of hardware. And these guys are going to help me talk to you about what it means in terms of changing the nature of the product. I think it has a lot to do with the data. And I think it has a lot to do with the intelligence, but we'll see if they agree. So with that as setting the stage, and by the way, we're going to keep this as informal as possible, so whenever you would like to ask a question or even offer your own opinion, raise your hand. Make sure you keep it as concise as possible though, in the process, and we'll be happy to entertain questions and comments. Okay? So, why don't we let Ward tell us about himself and a little bit about a company called GE, is that what you're doing?
Yep.
Go ahead.
I am Ward Bowman, principal software architect for GE, and up until the beginning of this year, I worked in brilliant manufacturing. So basically, when you go downstairs and you care about the brilliant manufacturing, we're basically moving manufacturing from on-premise into the cloud and helping our customers basically see across their plants. So manufacturing really is very siloed today. And what we spent last year is basically helping them bring all that plant data to the cloud in a very consistent way, as well as accessing additional data in the plants. As of January this year, they've taken a lot of our businesses and created GE Digital. So we're part of GE Digital now, which is all of our software businesses, and pretty much anyone that's basically not producing hardware or a physical aspect of it. Inside that group, we've also moved from our engineering team actually to our services team to kind of follow what you're saying, because we actually see our services teams growing, providing new features and new functionality to our customers. So that's kind of a new role as of January, and I have my team, we're basically out there. In our team, what we're really doing is the innovation lab in Fastworks. We're trying to basically act like a startup inside of GE and create new devices and new things and new ways of working with customers that aren't the traditional ways of doing it in the past. So instead of having engineering level documentation, we want to have quick APIs and Fastworks things and things that people can get out and use and actually get up and running in 15 to 20 minutes, not spend 3 months trying to figure the whole system out.
That's great. That's great. What we're going to talk about during the course of this session is try to tangibilize a lot of these ideas while we frame the topic. And you talk about Zybly and a little bit about Lockheed as well.
Sure. Thank you, Ted. So my name is Patrick Srinivasan. I'm the GM of Zybly, which is part of a local company here, a local public company here based in Boston called LogMeIn. We were just exchanging jokes about how the company gets interpreted as a German company or a Chinese company, depending on how you pronounce, but it is a local Boston company called LogMeIn, and Zybly is a part of that. And we have a unique history in the sense that Zybly has been around for about 3 years now, and we enable product manufacturers like Kyle and others to get to market very quickly and to build products that are inherently connected. And as we like to say, once you have connectivity, the possibilities are endless. So you can do a lot of cool things with that, but it all starts from getting your product connected, and to Ward's point, there's a lot of attention to the business benefits of IoT, which is really important, but oftentimes, as you probably heard from this conference and many others, it's really hard for a company with a lot of hardware legacy to figure out all the software pieces and how they fit it together, what are the right sequence of steps that you have to take, what technologies do you use. So that's where a platform like Zybly comes in, where our mission is to democratize that and demystify the complexity of IoT and help product manufacturers focus on things that they know best and things that drive business value for them, and leave all of the complex technology and infrastructure out of the equation. So I also enjoy being in this panel primarily for the fact that our teams work very closely together right now. And it turns out that I used to work with Ward and team several years back in a previous life. So it's really an honor to be on this panel.
The way I put it is the IoT industry and opportunity is infinite. There's a small circle of friends who are powerful. So Kyle, you are also in the plant business.
That's right.
A different kind of plant that I think Ward was alluding to. So tell us about your company, because it's a very cool company.
Yeah, thanks. So I work with a company called Freight Farms. We're a local Boston company, actually just down the road on Summer Street. What we do is retrofit or upcycle old shipping containers to do hydroponic farming. So we can use 90% less water to grow about a 1.5 acre yield yearly, which is inside of 320 foot square footprint. That's about 1,000 heads of lettuce a week, or 52,000 a year. We're trying to make local food a reality, economically viable, and just something that people want to get back into, because food is a problem. Plants, and I spend my time putting plants on the internet. So my role at the company is basically overseeing all technology, so from automation to the gateway to the actual servers and apps that run all of that. So a lot of experience kind of connecting those things, and yeah, so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, well, let's stay with you for a moment.
Yeah.
Because when we think about connected products, first of all, most people don't think about connected plants,
Right.
farm equipment, or maybe something that we talked about, but the whole agricultural marketplace has in fact been trying to instrument itself, as our friend Chris Vizendes would say, for a long time. But you've been doing this, the company's been in business for how long?
So we've been around 5 years. And one thing I think that's different about us, we're sort of digital natives in a sense. So any farmer who touches our platform is connected from day one. We have about 80 farms in the world. Only 4 farmers have ever farmed before. So the rest have never done it before. They want to change up their life, or their campuses like University, UMass Dartmouth, and a couple have farms right on site where their chef is running it. So yeah, we have the benefit of not having existing infrastructure.
Okay. First of all, talk a little bit more about who the customer base is, and who are you selling these containers to. We have a better idea of that. And I want to ask you a question about how your idea of the connected product has evolved over the 5-year period.
Yeah, so we have 2 primary customer base: small business farmer, meaning, or independent farmer, meaning I want to grow this and consume what I'm growing from that. And then we have the more commercial farmers. The small business farmer is the majority of it, and it's an exciting one. You may have seen, like, under 93, we have a farm that's feeding the Be Good in the Seaport, 60 pounds of kale a week. That's the really exciting part, is the small business farmers. However, at institutions, it's interesting. If you're in upstate New York, on Long Island, Stony Brook University has a farm. They can't get fresh produce during the winter unless they're shipping it. Food miles becomes an issue. So we're trying to solve for that at an industrial scale. But the small business farmer has been our real bread and butter today.
All right, so one more question.
Yep.
Let other folks get involved in this as well. That redefinition of the connected product. When you first started, and I think you were part of the founding team, right? You were thinking connected. What were you trying to connect, and how has that changed over time in terms of that, the importance of that connectedness?
Yeah, I think we'll probably revisit this throughout. It's a good topic. So there were 2 parts from it. One is, if you're running, the only way the economics work is if we can keep the time in the farm down. So if you're going to the farm every day, that's costly. We want to keep it to 20 hours or less a week to farm these things. So not having visibility in your farm is not a help. So that was the first motive, was if we can connect this so that I know that my temperature's fine, I know that things are fine in the farm, I don't have to physically be in the farm. So I have to drive to it. So that was the huge part. Second part was, we have these farmers out there who have issues. And anyone who's done, remote support with their parents know it's a very tedious stepping move. And that's more or less what this was. We've invented this new system. We're the only ones who really know it. There are no other ways to look at it. So connecting it was a way to establish patterns. So we could tell that the pump didn't run, that's why things died. So it started with just economics, making it more appealing, and now it's really evolving into just services and support around that.
So talking about the other kind of plans, Ward, I think GE's kind of gone through the same process, right? They've been looking at ways to use connected systems to reduce costs, but then gain some additional insight to improve efficiency. Talk about some of the things you're doing.
So we do the same thing. Instead of farms, we're actually looking at individual machines. So we have a lot of factories. GE has about 400 factories around the world. And our big thing is where we're looking at, can we use them more efficiently? Can we have people produce more in less time, or can we actually have them run multiple shifts, or should we run multiple shifts and hire more people? One of the key things is we have machines that we have out there that we use once a year, and we don't even know why we're using them. And as we start getting into 3D additive printing and things like that, you don't want someone walking and watching those machines. It takes a lot of the value. With 3D printing jet engines and stuff, they basically run for 3 to 5 days. So really just having visibility, the same thing with farm, what's out there first, is that really first step, so just finding out what's out there. So our connected machines are usually legacy-based machines where we're wiring them up just to gain that visibility to them today. And really the second part is then letting the manager that's running multiple plants around the world actually look at his plant. So he doesn't have to call the person up and have a 2-hour meeting every Monday morning or twice a day to have them do it. Really just to do their day job. Let them go make diapers or make whatever they're making and not have to talk to the manager and do the report outs. And one of the bigger things we actually see is actually Excel is our #1 tool that people use, because some people are so used to dumping it out of Modbus, getting a CSV file, importing it into Excel, and then they mail around Excel files. Whereas that's like 3 to 5 hours to visualize your data. Our big thing is now we're connecting, you know within minutes, and potentially looking into the future, how your machines are running.
That's good. So Pat, you're seeing a variety of use cases, some like this. Talk about some of the kinds of things that you're seeing with the other clients you're working with.
Sure. So listening to these two gentlemen, what really stood out was the fact that the primary reason for building connectivity to physical devices seems to be, first of all, to monitor the product health, right? The product or the system of products health. And then comes the fact that, okay, once you detect that there's some anomaly that's happening in the system, what do you do about it? Do you dispatch somebody, or do you fix it? Do you remote into it? So those two use cases are well understood. There are other use cases that are emerging. So for example, replenishment is another big one, especially in the context of what Amazon has done with Dash. So that all the way from a connected home setting to the industrial side, where if you can actually turn this not just from being a troubleshooting capability, but also a revenue generating capability, right? So you have the ability to get streams of information, but can you model that and predictably use that to sell more of something, or use the usage patterns and use that analytics and insights to drive better engagement with your users. So those are two additional reasons why we are seeing manufacturers really connect their devices. And I think underlying to all of these things is the fact that devices are now expected to be connected. I think that's a big expectation, especially from the consumer side. You're not spending $100 on anything and not expect to go to the App Store and download something to be able to control and command that. The expectations are changing, and last week Mary Meeker's Internet Trends report came out, and if you looked at that, she leads off by talking about the first thing that she talks about is the changing demographics, and that's changing everything, right? That's changing the expectations of consumer products to how they work in factories and digital settings. So that's something that that is going to be driving the need for connecting a device.
Yeah, the way I like to look at it is there kind of 4 levels of value. One is it allows us to react more quickly if something breaks. Number 2 is it allows us to anticipate, once we've been given enough information, to be more predictive of that. So we can look at where the thresholds are and warn the customer or send out somebody ahead of time before it breaks. Added to that, of course, is the operational efficiency in that current business. But then what is interesting is, over time, we will accumulate the information and more insight and start thinking about other business opportunities.
Yes, well, we actually have we use a model that we use in design great software. We have to break everything down. Design pattern. We go, it's called Como Bus, so it's bad Santana. Como Bus is the way we go. It stands for CO, which is collect. That's the very first thing. If I'm not collecting data, I can't actually get data. So you can connect to a Modbus, and a lot of times those are islands of data. The second thing is you start getting into it is we model the data. Because without modeling, I can't make it repeatable. So there's like connection protocols like MT Connect or Modbus, but when you did your Modbus, you probably had to say, oh, this Modbus register means this, and we're doing it. Then when most people stop is visualization, right? Once I can visualize it, then a lot of people can look at it and they go, oh, and that's really what we've been doing for 20, 30 years, is just SCADAs of visualizing data. So that's COMO. And then V is visualizing, and then A is analytics, right? That's the next one. People can understand it, but honestly, a lot of customers don't understand analytics until they've actually seen the visualization. And the last two, I think, where we're going to grow after we got all this connected, is that the active learning, so machine learning, and what actions can I tell the user so I can warn them ahead of time? And then do I learn and rebuild the cycle? And we were talking a little bit earlier about, really the problem is since they have these islands, machine learning is only inside your factory. We're trying to get people to look at everyone's factory. Anyone that's using this brand, or anyone that's using this brand of air conditioning, we have a big enough sampling, we can actually say, oh, these air conditioners work great at these temperatures, but not in this.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in the whole benchmark idea. We were talking about outside of cyclists. The last cyclists used something called Strava. And Strava, originally, we used basically to log our rides. So every day we log our rides against our own performance. But then, after a while, they improved the software. We became more aware that we could compete on each other's scores. And we all want to know, how do we compare and contrast with our peers? And whether we're in business or in our personal lives. So I guess in the farming business, you're trying to do the same thing in terms of optimizing the performance of some of your clients and customers as well, right?
Yeah, I look at the farm from like the tech side as like they use the term food computer and different things like that, but it's a platform so that if I can grow it here, I can grow it anywhere. That's a key part to de-risking the whole business model and all that stuff, but we're only now getting there. So we look at climate, equipment, and yield. Those are sort of our three data pillars, and you can flex any one of them to optimize the other. And the goal here is taste preference, right? So if I can grow the best mustard greens, or if I can replicate a Turkish herb once, I should be able to do it over and over again. And what's neat is we're now at 80 farms. Each one's doing about 20 million data points or more a year. We can start to validate these recipes faster. So before it used to just be us waiting a 7-week grow cycle. And now all of a sudden we can validate that across it. And it's huge. The idea that you can just click a button and say basil. And then not only that, where we're just getting into now is, okay, so we know that these are the best parameters based on our analytics. The next is, can we learn against that? And that's, we just launched a new product update to some of our software to better track yield. And that's going to start informing that learning curve. And we expect the parameters to always be adjusted.
But I think it's interesting that you even dropped the term, a data.
Right.
In an agricultural business, you usually think about the yield in terms of the number of crops, but a whole new dimension in terms of measuring success is how much data is being produced in that process.
Well, we have the luxury, again, like digital native is, everything we have is connected, so it's a lot harder. There's some interesting companies doing this for soil-based. It's hard. When you're trying to connect sensors across, we have actually a farmer that's 7,000 acre farm up in northern Alberta, and he's running full autonomous tractors, and it's incredible. He's bought new freight farms because he's like, buying another acre of land doesn't make sense. Because he has no visibility, the amount of work to connect that. So we're lucky in that sense, but yeah, it's at the end of the day, and that's why it's been interesting working with Zyvely. It's whatever they build for another company, I can basically copy and benefit from, because we are in no way different, except our output is lettuce versus some other product.
So Pat, do you have some other examples from some other industries that you've worked in, where it's some comparable kinds of learnings or something like that?
Sure, I think the underlying pattern is very similar. So we like to boil it down into three different things. One is you use the data to sell more. Second one is you optimize your service delivery costs in some way. The third thing is you use all of these things to build a more durable relationship with your customers and their users. And it's also very important to understand that there are two different worlds that consume IoT today. And the best explanation was from Frank in the audience from Forrester, where he really defined it exceptionally well, where there's a universe of consumers or operators, I think is what Frank called it. Operators like the smart city panel that was just here. So ecosystems that are consuming many IoT-enabled devices to operate something big and complex with the goal of optimizing a business process, right? Smart city business process of parking and monetization of parking as an example. So you have different sensors, different meters, different e-commerce and things like that that goes into optimizing a single workflow. Then the second universe are companies that manufacture those things, right? So we at Zybe and Kyle, we are in the second universe, which is we are vendors to those companies that produce something physical. So all of what I'm talking about is applicable more in the second universe rather than the first universe. But the first universe is all predicated on how I have an existing business workflow, how do I optimize and take out the inefficiencies out of that process? While the second one, in my opinion, is more exciting because it's just not about optimization, it is about opening up new business models and new revenue streams, like what I keep going back to the replenishment thing, where you can actually be very proactive and imagine if you get proactively prompted for an air filter at home, saying, okay, it's almost out of capacity, would you just like to reorder, press yes. I am 100 times more likely to purchase that right there, rather than, first of all, knowing that it has gone out, and then going to Amazon or something, or Home Depot, God forbid, go search for it and find it, and then go back again to buy it. It's just too much friction. So with connectivity comes the possibility of just streamlining all of these things. And one of the questions I like to ask Kyle is, without the freight farms being connected, would you have sold 80 containers? And each of these containers, it's not cheap containers, right?
Right. It's very expensive. It sucks. So we build all here in Massachusetts. We manufacture in Westboro. Yeah, it's a lot. The secondary market for shipping containers is rough. There are a lot of, and we use the high-end insulated pharmaceutical ones that have a 30-year life. So that's a whole thing. Yeah, it wouldn't have, because people want to be confident. So we release a container year, a new version, and it is fully informed on qualitative and quantitative data. So we very much, hey, this thing is leaking, versus I can also see that on these 10 farms, humidity's been an issue. So it informs our product decision that makes the product better. So that's huge. And then every farmer is basically the best advocate for new farms. So not being connected, our first 5 farms were connected and we don't know them. Even to this day, we have lost touch with them. And that's, we learned very quickly that wouldn't work because they're either failing or succeeding and we don't know. So the best part is once we're succeeding, we can engage with them. We're trying not to only be putting out fires, we engage with these farmers who are doing well, learn what's happening and try to recycle those best practices. So some of the products I'm building around workflows, calibrations, audit logs, all of these things that you're doing anyway, if we can automate that makes the farmer's life even better. So it's this great, kind of jump to the end of the rebuild cycle that you were talking about, without even using any sort of big data. It's just like, oh, this sucks. All right, let's fix it. So yeah, the connectivity has just been kind of assumed, and it's been a huge a perk as far
so
as
essentially what you're saying is this is like the Tesla of farming,
Absolutely.
right? You are improving the hardware as you go along, and you don't even, as a customer, you don't even realize that your container is now much smaller this month compared to 3 months back.
Well, an interesting problem we were talking, Modbus is this wonderfully awful thing that will be around for a long time to come. And we had a Modbus controller, and you had to have a Windows PC with a PLC card to do a firmware update. And if it broke, and it was done. And so I spent a lot of time working with Sidelines and other vendors to get a gateway in place that is just connected. And our goal was to never run a firmware update on that Modbus again. Keep it stupid. So now, actually, everything we write is fully backwards compatible to the first farm because the register is a register. So that's been a huge, I think an interesting thing where IoT blends into hardware is, we're talking about this continual development. I'm pushing software updates almost daily to our farms. No one knows it, it just happens. There's no firmware update. And it can be little things like optimization or some security improvements or big feature updates. And I guess I just assume it now, but it is a hard process. And I know you guys are doing some interesting things on provisioning. And once you have that, we're lucky we don't have huge, our scale is weird, but once we get to 1,000 of these, it gets very interesting deploying those software. So that in and of itself is an interesting
Well,
piece.
you basically you've become a software as a service company.
Absolutely.
Powered by the cloud.
Yep.
And it happens to focus on the IoT use case, so to speak, in a specific industry.
Yep.
Before I ask a whole series of more questions, let's see if there are any questions from the audience at this point. Anybody want to raise a hand, or should we just keep going? We'll keep going. Up there, go ahead, Joe.
So beyond hardware, I was curious to what extent you're seeing things like platforms come into play, both as tools and as obstacles in terms of using those tools efficiently, web portals, APIs, and platforms in general.
Yeah, so we, up until very recently, where I was a team of one, so I built it was a lot of work, but I built all of our apps, our server, and our stack myself, and it was only possible because I consumed every single API I could. I don't think I rebuilt anything. So whether it's, we were using Parse, now we're using Parse Server, which is actually pretty nice to run Heroku, so we don't need a DevOps team. We're using Xively. I use as many open source libraries for Swift as I can for our mobile development. We use Love It Red, which is a Lua version of Node-RED. So anywhere I cannot build something, and this is where we're talking about, I've been very good at also letting up with companies building stuff that I can take advantage of. I think the challenge now is not focusing, it's easy to geek out on the tech, but we're at a point now where we can actually deliver real orders of magnitude better consumer experiences without building anything really. I like to think of myself as a mechanic and not an engineer, so I can buy the turbo and put it on my car. I don't know how to build either piece. And that's an exciting time because the speed of building is huge, hugely improved.
And Ward, you're both a consumer of this and now a vendor of this with your own platforms. Talk about that process.
You just stole my analogy. So one of the things we're actually working on is providing an entire platform for our solutions. Since we're a big company, we're actually opening it up in an entire solution so that way our people can basically just use it. So one of the things we find is that as we kick up a project, I have to have a Cassandra expert, I have to have this expert, so the teams have to be 15, 20 people to solve the problem. And we're trying to build our platform for next. So that way we can just reuse it. So we're hoping that in July when we're going to our developer conference, we'll be giving boxes to people where they're pre-made. And what they're going to be doing is helping us define domains and what additional functionality we want. So we actually see a platform very important. Not a platform where we're building it all. Actually, if anything, we're partnering with a lot of companies, Pivotal, PTC, and other companies to help fill in the places because you don't build everything yourself anymore. It's just impossible. And we're going to build a platform that all of our 400 customers and our 400 factories and our customers can use in a very standardized way because we are a big company. Standards are, cut down costs. But we're actually looking at kind of using almost the startup mentality. So my team walked out, so I can say what I want now. So we actually have a whole bunch of people that are working with us. That the idea is that we're trying to get the very much startup mentality, and we're actually a small group inside of GE that's actually working with these and trying to build things. What's good is we can work with IBM or Intel and say, hey, come in and help us, and actually build that entire platform. So we actually see the platform as the key for us to go faster in these factories because people don't want to buy disparate pieces anymore and build the car. They just want the car and maybe replace the radio with a better stereo system or a couple upgrades, at least in our world.
Well, I was just going to add, one interesting thing that's been an interesting experience of using just Parse Server, for example. It's been open source. The amount of progress it's had since it's open source has been huge. And then the other side, where I've seen this benefit me hugely, is IoT especially is uncharted. As much as we like to think it's right, it's not. It's young. We don't know best protocols. It's very messy. I'm always changing things, and a lot of that is driven by learning what Xively and other people are doing. So by containing yourself and trying to go at it alone, you're actually just disadvantaging yourself. So I found a lot of advantage, again, just being a parasite on this larger system of, okay, those are best practices and coming down because there's no way any one person is going to solve it. That's been really nice.
It was interesting, in the first panel, one of the guys said, when I think it was the last question, what should you do, what should you do? And one of the guys said, don't build another platform. Patty, you're in the platform business. Talk about how you've seen that business evolve and what kind of receptivity you're seeing now as this marketplace matures.
Well, no, that's a great question. And our tagline is "Don't do it yourself." So So the reason why we think that is important is because I think 3 to 4 years of IoT maturity has brought us to this place where smart technology vendors like ourselves, I think we can figure this out faster because this is what we do for a living. We have the ability to attract and retain good talent, and this is what we do. We build software, we build infrastructure, we build technology, while hardware companies build other things, right? So I think there are enough patterns out there now that we can really build solid technology pieces above and beyond just general purpose things that you can get from any cloud provider. The maturity has reached to a point where you can actually have purpose-built IoT stacks where rather than starting from zero and spending 18 months in assembling all this technology, you can actually get that far in 2 weeks. And we have started measuring progress for our customers in days. And there was a time when everything was measured in months. And then it came down to weeks, and now within a week we can actually get somebody up and running as long as they've figured out some of the hardware things. That's still an open-ended question, but from a software point of view, we are talking about days, not even weeks.
I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But I don't, so I think where you are, and where we're trying to be is, I think we're actually, you're a pivotal point where all these different customers that you have can share information. So you're not just a platform, you're more a community, right? I mean, that's, I think, the big thing that we're finding is that you can't do it yourself. But really by opening the communication, so while this IoT is actually the communication of people building stuff that makes every product better. So you're building a farm, which is not really that much different to a lot of other, right? But it would be totally different 5 years ago.
Yeah. All right, so I want to bring it back to why we're here. Sarah will appreciate the fact that a lot of us could have been at a broader event rather than being here for these few hours. And it had a lot to do with, okay, so why Boston, why Massachusetts, why this region? I'll give my own personal opinion about this. I shared with the panel before. I've been in this industry for 35 years. I spent the first 3 years commuting back and forth to the West Coast. Not only because it was warmer and sunnier and more pleasant, but more importantly, the attitude of people out there was entirely different. They enjoyed talking to each other, even if they were enemies. They would collaborate with each other. That's only become apparent to folks around here in the past 5 or maybe 10 years, partially due to the great work of organizations like Mass TLC. There's a more collaborative, more open environment. In IoT, which is so dependent on the aggregation, the integration of various piece parts, it's essential to have that collaboration in order to be able to be successful. Talk about that. Why Boston? Why now? Why is GE coming in besides the obvious reasons they've already talked about?
I think the key thing is we've been doing it for hundreds of years in New England, and I think your point is we were just stoic for years and years. We just kept doing the same thing, manufacturing. Now that the mills are empty and these containers and things, we just are repurposing. And I think the technology's been out there, and I hate to say the California coast kind of think they can rebuild everything. And we're just stoic. We said, okay, we're doing the exact same thing, now we go to IoT. And we have really a fertile ground of places to go. Reuse buildings, reuse all that, and we have some of the best schools in the world. So I think it's really, we're fertile. We're just absorbing the IoT now, and we're just going into the next transformation.
Patty?
So from my point of view, it is, so what is IoT? Right? IoT is innovation. You need hardware, you need software, and you need business jobs to put all of these things together. And I don't think there's any other place in this country or elsewhere where you actually have everything converging in a very dense area. So we have the best universities and the smartest people. We have a lot of heritage with hardware, great enterprise software companies, and business jobs. Then on top of that, one of the things we were just talking about in the hallways is there's a very, very increased amount of energy around startups in the Boston area. We were, in fact, ranked #1 in the country last month by the Chamber of Commerce. So you combine all of these things, this just seems like a perfect setup for Massachusetts and Boston in particular to be widely successful in IoT, and you're beginning to see the signs of that.
But I think, just to follow up with that, I think the other thing is we're actually seeing our cities, so New Bedford switching from a fishing company to a technology company. So I think a lot of the cities are transforming themselves, and like Chris's team, that basically we're going to these cities, New Bedford, Fall River, and these other ones that have been fishers for years, to now there's like custom farms and wheats, and who knew there were that many wineries in Massachusetts? I think people are just reinventing themselves.
Yeah, I think it's true. Kyle, what would you like to?
Yeah, I mean, we, as freight firms, we benefited from so we went through Mass Challenge, then we did Techstars, and we are still in touch with all of those communities. So that was like a foundational block to make it easier. There is a very, well, we're down the street from Xylee, so there's a cluster. And I think from the like funding and expertise standpoint this isn't that much crazier than what enterprise, it's this new frontier, and there's a lot of just legacy skills here that can transform to it, and we've definitely benefited. The other one is Massachusetts, it's been around a while, it touches every industry. So if you assume software is eating the world and IoT by extension, you can find agriculture, manufacturing, shoot, whatever you want to do, there's a good chance there's a customer here. And they may be stoic, but they were original innovators. So I think there's some interest, that's been interesting for us is having everything here.
Yeah, and to that stoic point, they're not going to be beating their chess in the healthcare industry, or financial services industry, or manufacturing industry. I've got 3 boys, and the youngest son is between his junior and senior year at UMass, and he's in the innovation center at one of the insurance companies where they're studying the driverless car and its implications on cities, but more importantly on insurance companies. And these things are going on, but they're kind of kept quiet in the conversation of things. Whereas you might hear about things on the West Coast because they're trying to publicize it in a different way. So other thoughts about this topic? You'd like to throw a question out? Go ahead. Wait for the mic first.
So Patty, you just listed out what is IoT and you left out the network. So let me ask a question, going across these applications and where you see them going, where is the network succeeding and failing, either in terms of technologies that you need or in terms of price points that you have to hit?
I can lead it off. It's not a conscious omission by any means. We just expect the network to be there. Maybe that's a bad assumption, but there are several answers or layers to your question. So I don't know if I can do justice and let others chime in, but
I was getting that. So it's cheaper right now for us to have a company cell phone plan for each farm than to use a Verizon or AT&T M2M plan by like an order of magnitude. It's $1, or I'd say $10 per gig. For them, it's like $10 for a couple of megabytes. So there's just a pure interesting. They're trying to monetize that, and I get it. And we're not big enough to get into this. So that's been an interesting fight I've had with the network. It is a huge problem. So we have farms in weird spots, and what we're doing is gateways are important and best practices. Store it locally, and maybe the farmer can come in and get a hotspot set up and set it up. I do think it's a safe assumption. It's assuming it will be there. So if you're going far, kind of like how Siri was built way before it was possible, I don't think it's crazy to think networks will be around and better. As of right now, if I went out tomorrow and tried to connect my farms over cellular, it sucks. So it's an interesting problem today.
Yeah, but my own answer to that is, the good news is it's getting better. The bad news is you've got to really match the network to the use case and the business model you're trying to sell. I've got a good friend who's on a traveling CIO and basically does interim work, and he called me from some far off place because he was working in the ag tech business at the time, and he knows I'm Mr. Cloud, so he calls up, and the first thing out of his mouth is, Jeff, you understand how bad the cloud is? Because you couldn't get connectivity wherever you have to be. But I think people are getting smarter, like Kyle, and understanding what I can retrofit the appropriate network to the appropriate problem as we go along.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, we're in South Boston, we're running on Comcast, and our internet goes down. Networks suck.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
Other questions? There's one back here.
Thank you. Dan Ostrauer, Altitude. As you're seeing existing product manufacturers make this switch from being regular product manufacturers to being IoT companies and becoming service companies, what are the key organizational changes that you're seeing that lead to success, both at the beginning, the first steps, and then as they evolve?
Salespeople. I don't think they know how to communicate it. I think they sell traditionally, and it just falls on deaf ears. And I think there's a a lot of education is already happening in the public, but a lot of people walk in and sell the Modbus controller, not sell up, the additional functions around it. So they're not treating it like a service sale, they're treating it like a standard product sale. And you can't go in those companies that way. You have to walk in, you have to be a partner, you can't lose your customers in a year. You basically have to change the way you sell. It has to be a partnership. You have to get their trust by getting them into a POC. Then you have to work your way up there. And if you don't have proof points, basically most people are just waiting for it. And our salespeople, a lot of the salespeople have a problem doing that. We're changing that from just selling you a controller to actually selling you a service and then understanding the customer,
So I'll extend that answer a little bit. One of the biggest eye-opening things that I've noticed in the last couple of years is things we take for granted from a software point of view is so alien to traditional product manufacturing companies. So service or the services team is the biggest organizational challenge that I see from a product manufacturer's point of view. Because most of these product manufacturers never had to service their customers directly. Either they had some distributors or some VAR taking care of the support calls, but now the expectations are changing. So it's really interesting that we've actually hosted a lot of product companies just come to us and just walk the hallways to see how we do support. Has nothing to do with how they support, but they just want to know, okay, what are the policies? What kind of software do we use? How do we manage escalations? How do we manage proactive communications to our customers? Because we operate a very large transaction SaaS business, and product companies have no idea what this is about. Like, okay, how do you get your customers' information? How do you build a database? And how do you stay in touch with them? So I think the biggest difference from an organizational point of view has been the servicification of the product has to be reflected in the organization as well.
And I can extend that. I actually talked to a lot of your customer. It's been nice learning kind of how people make those transitions. I look at our firm very much like it's analytics. So we have an onboarding flow. So I know if you hit these metrics that you're going to probably succeed as a firmer. That's never existed in hardware before. And that part of me thinks that a lot of companies are going to be really scared and terrified when they see how little use or how much use they get on their actual AC unit, or that this person, I can actually run this air filter for 4 years and I'm fine. So there's also I have to assume there's some hesitance to know. Because right now I ship it and I look at my monthly sales and I'm good. I don't have to worry about churn and all these other factors. And that's been interesting how surprised people are with the visibility we have and owning up that this firm has failed with this owner for these reasons and we can fix it.
So I'll add one more layer on top of that. And actually, Patty, you touched on this earlier in the last comment, reinforce it. It's all about ultimately customer engagement. We're really talking about becoming more connected to the end user, however you define it. Be it internal employee, or an instrumented plan, but it also could be a connected customer, whether the consumer or the commercial sense. So we're really talking about a change in mindsets around the definition of the product being a connection point to that user. And as a result, one of the more difficult issues is the change in skills. GE probably personifies this more than any company. You've got corporate leadership that said, we're going to become a digital software IoT company. There's also guys saying, we need a whole lot of software developers to make this happen. So it takes a combination of both, but it also takes a ton of leadership to pull all the cats together, because it is the transformation, the definition of how you're designing a product, all the way through to how you're selling and supporting that product as well. Unless you're singularly focused on the point is how we satisfy the end user, you're going to miss the point. You're going to miss the boat rather. So, do we have time? We got one more hand. Oh, we'll take one more, since there's one more hand there.
Dr. I'm very out of Chicago, and I work for the Illinois Technology Association. And a lot of things you're saying here, very resonant, very similar to Chicago and the big Midwest, stuff between the two coasts. But a question along those lines, just kind of a two-part. Can you kind of talk about collaboration between large companies, startups, corporates, and that type of thing? And then is there anything new in that? There's a lot of things going on, positive things. And then maybe relative to Boston, Massachusetts, what are you doing outside? What's your kind of thoughts about attracting more people back into Boston or or collaborations you have either in the US or globally?
Maybe Kyle, you should start on this because you mentioned Mass Challenge and Techstars and Mass Technology Leadership Council. There are a lot of these organizations that are being funded and supported and mentored by established companies for young startups.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good observations, which was like that the talent, if you set up here, it's hard to leave, so like, how's now, I'm not gonna, it's a lot more work to leave now if you can capture interest at the right stage. Techstars, I went through 500 startups on the West Coast, but never really clicked in on that with an earlier company, but being involved with Techstars and Mass Challenge, it draws people here. Like I have friends who moved from Montreal, from other cities here, and then once you get up and running, you usually stay. Maybe 60% stay or something. So that I think is a key part to, if I win here, I feel like I have a positive association with it. It's great. We're currently working with some developers who I've met at another company through Techstars, who had moved back home and are now back in town to work with us. So you also build a community in an easier way because inherently developers and us, we're busy building, we're not out socializing, so forced interaction is a good thing. And then I actually just touch on the collaboration part. We've benefited so much, so with Zyla, for example, we do a lot of promotions together, branding. I'm willing to share our space and explain how we use Zyla, and Zyla is willing to promote us as a consumer of theirs. That has worked really well. No one likes, generally speaking, my wife is in PR, and no one likes to hear it directly from the company. Customers always help. So as a startup, it's a good story. So it's actually been a nice benefit with a few of the partners we have where we can highlight the product being actually used without it being like a sales pitch. Yeah.
And we all know GE's coming to town for the very same reason. We wanted to be a part of that atmosphere.
Right. So I think for us, we're looking with Chris and basically reaching out to us. GE is actually looking at a lot more teams like ours to basically go work with small companies because we're not, GE, you think about it as marching along at its pace and figuring out what people are doing is one of those things. So we actually go out and work with a lot of companies, and there's a group called GE Ventures that's actually investing in it because GE wants to start getting into that venture capital, start helping these teams. But we've seen almost the same failure rate in GE that we would see in venture capital, even though we're very safe, we make sure we vet everyone. So what we've started doing is actually working with them to either put what we call TLC, because we like to make them silly things, technology, legal, and commercial all in there. So maybe the company, the right thing to do is introduce them to the 400 GE factories and bring their technology in, or it's the right thing to embed someone into their company and help them get up to speed faster. So kind of like probably what you guys do is where we don't really have the APIs yet because we're still, still an engineering company, we're actually putting people in these companies to help them get up as faster. So I think collaboration and working with them is the number one thing because if not, you're basically just investing money and hoping they make it versus actually putting the effort into it.
Dan, you're sitting right in the middle of the innovation district, so talk about what you see there.
Sure, and I also have some exposure to the Chicago innovation scene as well. So I think the biggest difference in Boston is that it just feels smaller, and maybe smaller is the wrong word, it's tighter, I would say. It's a lot of things, especially if you come to a conference like this, I probably know 30-40% of the audience by name. And the reason for that is I think there's a lot of tight collaboration between different parts of the ecosystem, right? Whether it is mass TLC or big companies, small companies, platform guys, hardware guys, startups, incubators. So there are specific incubators here that are promoting and pushing this notion of hardware plus. Right? So a combination of these things makes the ecosystem feel a lot tighter, while the other ecosystems that I'm familiar with, like Seattle, for example, or Chicago, there's a lot more diversity. There's a lot of things happening. While in Boston, it feels much tighter because there's singularity of the purpose, I guess. That's the big difference.
And what's also interesting at that point is the diversity we've had on robots. I've always thought robots would be way over here. With IoT, they're all kind of a centrifugal force bringing them all together, which is awesome. One more time. Well done.
We're out of time if we want.
Thank you, panel. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.